Alright, so I promise this is the last video for bodywork. It's surprisingly short. You know, we only covered about 10 to 12 minute videos so far with the bodywork. I tried to shorten it down as much as I could without taking a lot of detail out. Okay, so this is our third coat of Bondo on these spots here. I had to fill in a couple of low spots. Everything's looking a lot better now, and as we progress through the rest of this video, I'm going to just cover, recap on some important tips about the sandpaper through seams. We had to mix a little bit of epoxy up for our cracks. We had a couple of cracks in the front body kit. Now, if you notice, I didn't make a lot of videos, bodywork videos, on the front body kit because it's basically the same process as we did here in the rear body kit. Filling in low spots and taking out waves. So I didn't film too much of that. Well, I did film it. I'm not going to be including it in the series, but I'll probably end up making them and putting them in here anyway for you. So yes, I guess I am including them in the series, but not in order like this. I'll just have like bonus videos, bodywork, bumper cover, body kit, number 1, 2, 3, 4, maybe something like that. So if you see what I'm doing here, that line looks a little curved, alright? It's not a straight line. So I'm just straightening it out here with the block. It takes a couple of seconds. We're just going to try to do the best as we can. And if it's still off a little bit, once you start coating this thing with 2K primer, right? And then you block sand it straight and on the curve here, the line is going to start to get straighter and straighter. So if you see, like, we kind of fixed it, that line looks straighter now.
I wanted to point out to you that there's no real shortcut sometimes in doing custom work. As you can see, I'm doing some sanding in these little seams here. There's no way else to do it quicker than just by doing it by hand. Okay, so you're just going to take a little small piece of like 80 grit sandpaper or so, like this, right? And you know, curve it like this, and then just basically get inside like this. Okay, and take your time.
So we're just filling this little toe hitch hole here in the body kit, the front body kit. It was supposed to be, there was a cap for it, but it was really messed up and not even nice looking. So I decided to just get rid of it and get a clean look for the front cover and just fill this up with some Bondo. So we're just going to fill that up, sand it out, and that's about it for that. Alright, you remember we said that I had to do a little bit of epoxy work on my front cover body kit. There was a couple of cracks in the seams here, and whenever filling cracks in plastic or fiberglass like this, you never want to use Bondo because Bondo will crack in seams where there's tension like this. So you always want to use some kind of epoxy. I'm using the Danaweld here by 3M. They don't make this version anymore, but if you just search for the 3M epoxy, plastic metal epoxy, that's the stuff that you want to use. It's usually a two-part mixture. They may come in some fancy tubes nowadays, or you need a different type of caulking gun, but that's basically the stuff that you want to use. It's a good epoxy for fiberglass, plastics, and even metals and stuff like that. So we're just laying a little bit of that on, and we're going to go ahead also cover it from the back because we want to make sure we have a little bit in the back. Here we're just giving that toe hitch hole another coat of Bondo. We had a couple of pinholes in it, so we're just going to do that, sand it out, and that's it. So here's what the rear cover looks like. This is basically finished off with 80 grit. Now what we're going to do is take our DA with a little bit of 220 grit on there. 220, 240 grit is what I like to finish off with before primer. Sometimes even 280 if you don't have either of those papers. We just want to cut down the body filler nice and smooth. This way we could put some primer on it, and you know, 2 heavy coats of 2K primer. This way we could go ahead, cut it down, and we'll be ready for paint. So here's our disc. We're just going to lightly go over the all the bodywork areas right here, just to cut it down, like I said, just like that. Alright, you don't have to stay in one area too long. Just basically cut it so you see a little bit of powder coming out. You're going to notice the scratches going away, and that's about it. So I'm also going to hit the rest of the front body kit, and let's see what else. Then we're going to get into water sanding, so I'll talk to you on video with that.
Okay, so what we're doing now is just going to wash down the rest of the bumper cover with 1200 grit wet sand, because if we get some overspray on it, we want to make sure that we could just sand it right in and blend it in. So, you know, we're just washing it all down with 1200 grit. It doesn't matter if your Bondo gets a little bit wet. It's okay, it'll dry. No big deal. It's not going to hurt anything for wetting Bondo like this, okay? Then we're just going to blow everything off, clean it, wipe it down really good, make sure there's no dust, make sure there's no water in these crevices. I'm also sanding this part, and we're going to go ahead and put some 2K primer on it. But before I do that, when I tape this thing up, I'm going to actually tape the top of this bumper up with paper so we don't get overspray on this part. Okay, there's no need to. We're just going to sand the line out. We're just going to feather out the line right in this area. So you'll see what I mean in a little bit. This way, when we start doing our blending, I could focus mainly on basing the bottom of this thing, right? And then not really touching too much up here, because this is where it's going to meet up with our quarter panel and also our trunk area. So I'm not going to try to really distort the color too much. This way we get a nice color blend, more like, and it'll come out a lot nicer. Okay, the front bumper, we have no choice because we have to paint the whole thing, and on this job I am not going to blend into the fender, but it should look good. And most factory automobiles, the bumpers are painted in a different factory. I don't know if you knew that, but most new cars, if you look at the brand new cars nowadays, you'll notice that the front and rear bumpers are different color than the fenders and the quarter panels. It's because they are painted in a different factory, okay, most of the time. So, you know, keep an eye out for that. When you look at a new car, take a look at the new bumper, especially if it's all one, you know, painted one color. I'm not talking about like the black bumpers on cars, but just take notice to that, and you'll see that most times there's a tint of color difference, but you really don't notice it. All right, so here's the Beamer here, and we're going to show you, you know, what it looks like when it's done, and it should look pretty good.
Alright, so we're wet sanding now with 1200 grit. This way, if we have any kind of overspray, we could just wet sand it, blend it out.
Just make sure you get all seams, you know.
Alright, so before priming, you want to make sure you wash off all your body parts, and don't forget to hit the back of it. Alright, the back of it, you want to make sure you get all the dust out, because you don't want any type of debris or anything flying around when you're painting, right? So use a good dish soap or a degreaser, wash all your body panels down very good, rinse it off. And I like to usually, if it's nice and sunny out, I'll let it sit in the sun for 10-15 minutes to get completely dry. Bring it in the garage. You want to hit all the seams with your air gun, because you don't want any, you know, leftover water and seams coming out while you're painting. So make sure all your cracks and seams are completely dried before you start priming or painting, for that matter. Alright, so we're hitting the front down now. The next videos will be mixing up our 2K primer. We're going to be using a Nason by DuPont 2K prime, 2 to 3 heavy coats on both front and back body kit. And that's it. Then we're going to be checking for glaze imperfections, you know, putting some glaze putty, repriming, and basically getting ready for painting. So we're more than halfway through. Hope you're enjoying the course, and I'll see you in the next vid.